There you are.
Hello,
You look
here we
great.
are. What?
You look great.
Yeah, I had to pull myself back together.
Yes.
And anywho,
Anywho,
we were having very profound conversation about getting it on.
yeah.
And we were
Talking
talking
about
about
how to,
apps, which apps you use, and being upfront about what your expectations are.
yeah. And I think everybody knows Tinder, OkCupid, Bumble for people who identify as women, and Open. Hashtag Open is a good one to go to.
Hmm.
I really like them as well.
Hmm.
Um, and those are the ones that I know of. Those are the ones I use.
Right. And I mean, I don't obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I don't use the grinder and scruff, which are the ones that are
Mm,
pretty common among the gentlemen.
yes.
Which maybe if somebody watching is more familiar with those ones, they can chime in.
Yes.
Um, but I think it's one of the things that's really important to understand about navigating casual sex is that the skills that you need to navigate casual sex are not that different at all
Hmm.
from the skills that you need to navigate sex in committed monogamous relationships.
Hmm.
So, and much like we talked about in our session last week on open relationships, the skills you need
Hmm.
to negotiate open relationships are really no different than the skills you need in monogamous relationships. I think we've all just sort of been given this story that, once you find a partner, love, sex, and the rules of relationships just kind of ooze out naturally, and it's just sort of spoon fed to us.
Hmm.
When the truth is, the complications of navigating, of talking about sex, like talking about relationships, which we talked about last week, the complications of talking about sex are the same. You have to be able to be, to be willing to talk about what your hopes and expectations are in the beginning, but also being able to talk about what what you're offering as well as what you're getting. And I think sometimes, depending on what we're looking for in casual encounters, we can be a little bit more focused on ourselves and what we're getting rather than creating something with another person. And so I'd be curious for people who are listening who maybe have had experience with that, how they get around that, because I think, again, one of the really crucial factors that often gets omitted is having reverence for the moment that in casual sex, sometimes we can be really confronted with shame or
Hmm.
really confronted with discomfort or really confronted with embarrassment. And instead of being able to, sit with that and take ownership of it, we kind of try and sweep it under the rug, and we kind of, we brush it off and sort of say, oh, well, it's just sex, it doesn't matter. But I think that there's something really important in that, the
Hmm.
part of us that wants to say, oh, it's just sex. I mean, I think just sex is a thing.
Hmm.
But if you're going to have just sex with another human, you have to understand that you're interacting with a whole other person. And if it is really just sex that you want
Hmm.
and you just want to get off, which is fine, there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm.
But take ownership of that and consider why you're bringing another person into it. Why don't you just do it by yourself if that's all
Hmm.
you're looking for, honestly? And
Hmm.
it's about having that kind of real inquiry with yourself.
Yes, asking yourself why are you wanting it this particular way
Yeah.
can really illuminate uh, more specifically what you're looking for. So if you're someone and you haven't really been in touch with your sexuality that much, and all of a sudden you're feeling this desire to, be with someone and have sex,
Yeah.
maybe, yes, sex, but maybe it's also the touch that you want, the
Yeah.
connection that you want, because you can know someone for 10 minutes or 10 years and never be intimate or vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
And so when you meet somebody, even if you will never see them again, you have an opportunity in that moment
Yeah.
to really connect with another human being in whatever way is available to you,
Right.
however that human being wants to let you in or not.
Yeah.
Um, And I think I have a quote from you, actually.
Oh, you're
I wrote
quoting
it
me
down.
back to me.
Yes, I'm quoting you back to you.
That's
Um,
flattering. What's that called? Is that a kind of sex move?
I don't know, but we can come up with one.
I think we're about to. This
Your
is
quote
how
is,
middle-aged ladies have sex on the internet,
that's right. That's exactly it.
quoting stuff to each other.
Yeah. Stroking each other's egos instead of each other's genitals. Um, so the quote is, what differentiates mediocre sex from fulfilling sex is connection and reverence. And I think that when I teach oral sex classes, that's what I teach is the ability to connect and have reverence for that part of
Yeah,
the body that you are pleasuring, that is connected to a human being.
yeah,
Like the
yeah,
reverence there, I think that's the perfect word,
yeah.
because it is, for some people, sex is like a meditation. And if
Hmm.
you want to think of it that way, you can think of it uh, as if you are meditating with this human. You
Yeah,
know?
that's a really nice way of putting it. Having
Yeah.
that shared moment that may or may not happen ever again, but even in that moment to appreciate the reverence of it as a, as a meditation for those for whom that speaks to, or, even just, if you're not kind of esoterically inclined and you just like your sex very kind of meat and potatoes or tofu and potatoes or however you
Right.
do it, to just really to respect the person, respect the moment between you, and respect the fact that sex exists and that's what you're seeking, and that is worthy of reverence. That it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
wrapped up in, some purity culture horse shit. It can be sex for its own sake is a perfectly good
Yeah.
reason to have a connection with someone, and it's that we, collectively, socially, to elevate that narrative and go, this is valuable and we need to take care of this, because it matters. Sex matters. Pleasure matters. It's
Hmm.
just how it is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Especially now, especially
Especially
now
now.
as we will eventually come out of this COVID, you know, sentence. Um, we will probably need to know we'll have to get in touch with how we relate to others again in a sexual space and in a romantic space, if that's your jam.
Yeah.
And so this is, I think, a good conversation to have, and to think about: how has this time changed you? Have you had any interesting thoughts about how you had a sex life before, as opposed to how you have a sex life now, as opposed to
Yeah.
have a sex life in the future? Um, have you become more clear on what casual sex is for you and what your needs are? And also, I think another question that came up, and I'm just going to sort of rephrase, about having it not just be about me, me, me,
Yeah.
and really thinking about what you can give the other person. What do you have that you're offering the
Yeah.
situation? Do you want
Hmm.
to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of what I was touching on before, that when we're going into these encounters and, we're clear that we want to have sex of some kind, and we can say that up front, and that's fine. And then also, it's really helpful to be able to talk about what kind of sex we want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what actually do we want to do? Because it's one thing to sort of say, let's have sex or something to that effect, but we
Right.
don't really know what that means, and now that we're, somewhat post Me Too,
Mm-hmm.
um, we do have to be able to start being really clear about, do you want to come up for coffee actually means
Right.
what exactly, and what are our expectations. And so being able to actually say, and this is where, understanding how we talk about our bodies, like, and the kinds of sex acts we want to do, or how do we feel when those words come out of our mouth? If we can't say, clit or pussy or cock or ass or whatever word we need to say, because we're too timid to actually say these words,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be really, really hard to express, our physical erotic longings to somebody else. And also, if they say stuff to us about what they want, are we going to be able to have a conversation and hear what they're saying to us and be able to show up for that and either say, yes, I'd like to do that, or no, that's not really my thing, but
Right.
I'll offer you this instead. How about that? And be able to do that part of the negotiation, because that's where things can go wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you have to have everything kind of ironed out step by step before you start,
Mm-hmm.
because that can be a bit of a passion killer. But certainly in the areas of, I like this, but generally I'm really not into anal, or I'm really not into, whatever. So the other person knows not
Mm-hmm.
to spring it on you halfway through and go,
Yeah.
what about this? And you're like, and your legs up here, and then you're vulnerable and you're nude and you're trying to impress them. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, really? Are we going to have this complicated
Yeah.
conversation right now? Have
Yeah.
it when you've got your clothes on. Have it when you're negotiating. If it's too hard to do it face to face, do it via text.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many ways now that we can communicate with each other. So, there's almost no excuse for this stuff to not happen,
Mm-hmm.
because we have so many ways of communicating, and we have to take responsibility for our stuff and what we can offer and what we're prepared, as well as what we're hoping to get, and be able to talk about this stuff with each other.
Yeah, I agree. Your sound is starting to show signs of going out, just so you know. Um, but it was just a little like crinkly, but
Okay,
we'll
that's
we'll
weird.
move on.
I have full internet happening. I've got full power. Am I back?
You're back. It's
Okay.
just going in and out a little bit.
Wow.
Um,
See, in and out. We're talking about sex.
said the actress to the bishop. Um, there, we got another question too about how can I be casual without catching feelings? And I think you were
Mm,
just sort of talking about you've got to put everything out on the table. You have
yeah.
to have a conversation about where you're at, and sort of keep that in check, not just with the other person, but with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And I think, the thing about catching feelings, it's as if, I mean, sex and feelings don't have to be separate. So there's no rule that they need to
Right.
be separate. You can have them together.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the first thing. And then the second thing is that, well, what is it about the catching of the feelings that's potentially bad? I mean, sex is motivated by feelings
Mm-hmm.
anyway, even for people who just want to, get it in and then run.
Right.
Even that is motivated by feelings.
Yeah.
There's a feeling of something. There's a feeling of validation. There's a feeling of horniness. There's a
Mm-hmm.
feeling of longing. There's a feeling of something. Sex is a profoundly emotional experience. Anybody who says that sex has no emotions, I don't buy it. There is always an emotion of some
Mm-hmm.
kind, even if it's, rage, but there's always something going
Mm-hmm.
on. So to say that sex, to have it without feelings, you're probably going to have it by yourself then. And even then, I'd still suggest that there's going to be some feelings involved, because that's what motivates us to have sex, is the feeling that we want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So catching feelings is more about an opportunity to check in with, well, what kinds of feelings does sex bring up for you?
Mm-hmm.
And if they become complicated, how can you use these experiences to learn how to set boundaries for yourself around what you will and won't do, how much you will and won't go into, where your limits are about what kind of sexual activities send you over the edge in a way that you're uncomfortable with, and a practice of learning to set boundaries for yourself
Mm-hmm.
so you can show up in ways that are going to be enriching for you and the other person
Right.
that you're with. And and this is a practice. Like, no one's born knowing any of this stuff
No.
at all. And again, I mean, people who've been following me for a while are probably sick of hearing me say sex is not natural, it's learned.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have to learn it, and that means we have to practice, much like learning how to play guitar. You have to play it over and over and over and over. And sometimes you only need to learn 3 chords and you can play a song. And sex is the same. You only need to learn a handful of things,
Right.
and you can do a bunch of stuff. But as you go along and you get more advanced,
Mm-hmm.
you need to learn more stuff. And so learning how to manage your feelings is a wonderful life skill. We all have to learn how to manage our feelings, whether
Yeah.
it's in sex, in business, in anything we do.
Mm-hmm.
So why not learn about feelings through sex? That's a wonderful way to learn about feelings,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm. And learn
Yeah.
about yourself and how to notice if you're going into an area that you've done before that doesn't work for you, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like checking in with yourself
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
The last question we have is an interesting question. Um, the person says, I am Demi Gray Ace, and learning there is a space where physical sex might be desired, pleasurable, or fun, even without what I may deem quote unquote sexual attraction. So the question is, this seems seated in my demi grayness because feeling legit sexual attraction takes a lot of time. I'm considering pursuing casual sex for the first time. What should I be asking myself? How common is it for demis and grays to want this?
Mm.
So I think first we should explain what a demi gray sexual is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, a demisexual is someone that is only capable of feeling sexual attraction after they've gotten to sort of know somebody a
Mm-hmm.
bit, have close emotional bond. And even then they might not feel anything, but
Yeah.
that's usually how it happens. A gray sexual is people who experience limited sexual attraction. And in other words, they experience sexual attraction very rarely, and sometimes with very low intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And ace is the identifying as asexual.
Mm-hmm.
So
No sexual
no
attraction to
sexual
any
attraction.
gender at
Right.
all.
Right.
Mm.
So
But an
this,
appreciation for masturbation often.
yes. Yeah.
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 Mm.
So this person is thinking about casual sex for the first time, and she wants to know, or he actually, I don't know who it is, or they, what should they be asking themselves? How common is it for this to happen?
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how common it is. That would probably be a question for the ACE networks. But um, I think, if they're considering casual sex for the first time, like I would say actually to an allosexual person, what's the motivation? What are you hoping to feel? What's your trajectory? Where are you headed with this?
mhm,
Because it will most likely be the same set of questions you ask yourself, which is, what am I hoping to get? What am
mhm,
I hoping to give? What would a successful encounter look like for me? What would an unsuccessful encounter look like for me? And if they are a person who does need emotional connection, how, I mean, bringing that up in the beginning of the encounter would probably be really important to
yeah,
say, I'm probably going to need 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 dates before we get to that level. Are you okay with that?
yeah.
Because somebody who's looking for tonight
Hmm.
maybe doesn't have the patience for
Right.
10 dates to get there, which, is fine. But it's going to mean that your options
Hmm.
for hooking up are perhaps going to be, more limited than an allosexual's. But even still, among allosexuals,
Hmm.
you're still looking for a particular quality. You're looking for a particular caliber. So
Hmm.
the more we actually start being discerning about our erotic connections,
Hmm.
the easier it's going to be to find what we're looking for. But it
Yeah.
does mean that the pool of potentials is going to get more and more narrow, because we will start, filtering out certain sections of people or values or communities that are not going to offer us what we're looking for. And that's fine.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not going to be anything goes for everyone all the time. And that's okay.
And there's a pot for every cover. Like,
Right.
I am more demisexual than allosexual. And
Mm-hmm.
and in the great old days of Craigslist personals, rip, um, I'd have to be really, really forthright, which I think is important for people to do. Say, listen, nothing's going to happen the first time we meet. We are meeting to see if there's any chemistry. We're
Yeah.
meeting to see if we like each other as human beings, you know, and if we might want to meet down the line.
Yeah.
And it really did, it breaks things in half and half, you know. Some
Yeah.
people are just like, see ya, and that's fine,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too with casual. You have to be comfortable, or at least ready for people to say no to you. If you're not comfortable with that, if you're not okay with people saying no, don't have casual sex, just masturbate.
Yes, exactly.
Seriously,
Yeah.
like this is the thing, you know. And somebody I interviewed on The Erotic Philosopher a little while ago called Georgie Wolfe, who's an author from Australia, has a book called The Art of the Hookup, and it's specifically about hooking up.
Yeah.
And even in that book, she says, you know, we have to get used to hearing no, we have to get used to saying no, and then we have to get used to managing the feels that come after somebody says no to us.
Yeah. And
because
no isn't personal. You
yeah,
know?
it's
not an
actually
attack.
good. Like you want someone to say no to you, because then you know where you stand, you know, and it's okay if you don't match. It's okay if they want to do stuff that you don't want to do, or vice versa, and then you just be polite, move on to the next one, because there's nothing worse than, you know, kind of being half-assed and agreeing to something you don't really want to do, and then you will regret it, and it will turn out badly. And, you know, part of all of us getting better at sex is just getting more real, you know, getting more honest with ourselves and with each other, and less shame, more pleasure. That has to be the mantra.
And that is a great place to wind down there, Miss
Wind
Darnell.
down.
So that was Casual Sex, everyone. You can find Cindy at cindydarnell.com. And you can find me at lchase.com. Also, Cindy has a great podcast called The Erotic Philosopher. And it's really, if you like this stuff, you're going to love her podcast. It's really wonderful.
Deep meat. That's what I offer. Deep meat.
Said the actress to the bishop.
Come on over to my place for deep meat.
I also am part of a new website called Wellby, WELLBY.net, and you can ask me questions, and you can book time with me on Wellby, and it's kind of a neat site. It's kind of new, so so there you go. There you have it, friends. We'll be back next week, correct?
We will.
Yeah. And we will come.
I'll have a different backdrop because I'm moving next week, so I don't know. It might be very plain, or it might be very luxurious. We'll see. Depends how much unpacking I get done.
Well, I think it'll look very luxurious. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by, and keep watch on our Instagram handles for what next week's topic is. All right.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Bye.